what is the scope of JavaScript variables? Well, first off, what is scope in general? Well, scope is at any given line of code, what data do you have access to? What data is within your scope or can you access at that line of code? And I'll explain that a little bit further as I give you examples here. But JavaScript has three different types of this scope. It has block scope, function scope, and global scope. Starting with block scope here, before ES6 or a new version of JavaScript that was introduced in 2015, JavaScript had only global scope and function scope. But then in 2015, in this new version, JavaScript introduced two new keywords, and these two new keywords allow you to declare a new variable that has block scope. And variables that have block scope, if they are within a pair of curly braces, they cannot be accessed from outside that pair of curly braces. So let and const, these are block scope variables, and you cannot access them outside of the curly braces from within they are defined. So here in this example, you can see that they declare let x is equal to 2, but outside of these two curly braces here, you cannot access this x variable. Now, if there was a pair of inner curly braces, so if I had let x equals 2, and then immediately below this line, opened up another pair of curly braces and tried to access x, you could. Because within JavaScript, you can look up scopes, but you can't look down scopes. So if I'm in this outer scope here, I can't look within this pair of curly braces to access x here. But if within this pair of curly braces, I had another nested pair of curly braces, I could look up the scope chain and access this x variable. But let and const in JavaScript are both block scoped variables. Now, for the var keyword, the only keyword to declare variable before ES6 in 2015, this is actually a function scoped variable. And these declarations can be accessed outside of a block. And just to define what a block is, it's anything in curly braces. So this could be an empty pair of curly braces. This could be a while loop, a for loop, an if statement, anything like that works as long as it's within a pair of curly braces. But for var here, you can see that outside the pair of curly braces here, you can access this var variable here because it's function scoped. And then as you can see here, function scope, JavaScript has function scope. Each function creates a new scope. Variables declared with var, let, and const are quite similar when declared in a function. Because var has function scoped, let and const, when they're declared in a function, they're going to be accessible throughout the entire curly braces of that function, the entire block of that function. So all these would kind of have this function scoped here. And then you also have global scope, and this would be like declaring a variable outside of a function and outside of any blocks. And these could be technically used global throughout your entire program. Okay, so block scope is that variable is only accessible within that curly braces, within that block of code. But just remember, if you have nested curly braces, you can look up the scope chain and look up to higher pairs of curly braces, but you can't look down the scope chain. And then we also have function scope. So if you declare a variable, even if it's a var declaration within a function, it's going to be scoped to that function and it's going to be inaccessible outside of that function. But then you also have global scope, where you can declare variables outside of a function and you're going to be able to access that everywhere because it's like being at the root scope and you can always look up. So you can always look up to that root scope and access this variable here.